Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Recovery Talk, the podcast where we explore the multifaceted world of substance use recovery. I'm your host, Shannon Roberts, and each month we delve deep into the challenges of substance use, share valuable resources to assist individuals and their families, and discuss best practices for delivering peer recovery support services. Between now and the end of August, we are thrilled to bring you a special series called Amplifying Diverse Voices. In this series, my colleague, Wardell Royal III of our Health Equity team will be hosting discussions with featured guests from various backgrounds within the recovery movement. Our aim is to engage in dynamic conversations about their personal journeys and highlight the incredible work they are doing in their communities. In this inaugural episode, we are excited to welcome two inspiring guests, Stancil Tootle and Nicole McAnnally. In it, they share their unique perspectives, experiences, and the impactful contributions they are making to support recovery. Stay tuned as we amplify diverse voices and continue our mission to provide hope, support, and valuable insights for all those affected by substance use challenges. Let's dive into today's conversation, and without further ado, let's get talking.
So I'll start off with the first question, which is share a little bit about your personal story.
You want to go first or me?
Ladies first.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So a little short background, I guess. So I was not born deaf, and I was born with a heart issue in the medicine back then in the 1980s made you deaf, blind, or have some developmental disability as a side effect. And I became deaf for that. And so I think the doctor figured out that I was deaf maybe around 2 years old. So my first the exposure to language was really spoken English. And I was taught some very basic sign language, and I went to a deaf school for maybe 1 or 2 years when I was in preschool, kindergarten, and then they decided to put me, they meaning my parents and the deaf school that I was going to, they decided to send me to a regular school. So I did not have an interpreter. I just went in myself from the age of like 7 until 13. And that was pretty rough. Then I went and learned sign language when I was in like my teens, and then I went to go do that and learn more about the deaf community, learn more about myself. And I'm 3 years sober today, and I own a company called Nikki Integrated Networking Consultant. And we are an organization that helps other organizations learn how to best connect with their deaf and hard of hearing employees, patients, and customers. So other than just relying on a sign language interpreter, so we teach them how to really get over their communication biases and just learn how to connect with their employees and patients in a better way. So thank you for having me here.
Well, good evening, or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stancil Tootle, and everybody call me Tootle. I am and I tell people all of the time, I am an unapologetically Black, blind male who lives in a rural area in long-term recovery, 34 years, and I stutter. I have a speech impediment, was born blind, and it's genetics, and I am a proponent of wellness, and I am a proponent of inclusion, and I'm glad to be here, and I love talking, and that's part of the reason why I don't use my first name. I tell people that when my parents realized that I stutter, they changed my first name to one that begins with the hardest word that's used the hardest letters for me to say without getting hung up, and that's words that begin with a S. So they changed my name to Stancil, thinking that was gonna make me shut up. So I just used Tootle, and looking forward to getting more introduced to my new friend Nikki. And thanks for having me here.
I wanted to add that it's funny that you mentioned your letters that you struggle with. So S is one of mine as well. So that was I had speech therapy for probably 16 years, 15 years, and there was a lot of lessons, constantly. Yeah, so those were my area issues as well.
So we maybe be related, Nikki. Who knows?
I wanted to ask you more about how your blindness is genetic. Could you explain some more about who as well in your family is blind?
Yeah, both of my parents were blind, and my daddy's mama was blind from what they told me. I got six other siblings. Well, I had six other siblings, and two of me, and it was me and one of my brothers who has transitioned. Couple of my kids got it. A couple of my brother's kids had it. My sister's kid got it. I got some grandkids, and I became a great grand back in November, and she got ooh, they would kill me for calling her he. But so, and it's a genetic thing, and some of the later generations have had some surgeries when they were young, trying to give them better vision, and it worked with one of my girls. They were able to correct her vision enough that she's able to drive and got license and all that other kind of stuff. But I try my best to make sure that all the ones that come behind me are comfortable living as a blind person in an inaccessible world.
Yes, so I wanted to also add that because I know that our audience isn't exposed to this sort of opinion, but I wanted to say that, you're extremely lucky to have had, so many blind people in your family to help guide you through, living in an accessible world, like you mentioned. So yeah, very lucky.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll ask the next question, which is, what led you to become part of the recovery movement? We'll let you start with the first.
Wow, that's interesting. Like I said, I've been in recovery. Well, last June 5th made 34 years. And what led me into recovery? Well, I got to use proper language on here. So, drugs kicked my butt. It truly turned me upside down. And now a couple of things that I think are important from me is that I was raised that number one, by me being blind and by me being Black, I was going to always have to work twice as hard as the average person if I wanted the basic recognition that other people get. So I lived my life being what I now come to understand, being an overachiever. And when I realized that I couldn't stop doing dope, I felt like a failure. And when I was using dope, when the drugs was no longer fun, and I wanted to quit, and I tried every method I knew of, because I knew I was smart. I got papers that say that I'm gifted, but I could not stop using drugs. And so I can remember when I was using, I'd be praying to God, if you just blow this lighter out or you knock it out of my hand and give me some kind of sign that I can quit. And it never happened. And I wound up in treatment, not going to treatment because I wanted to stop doing dope, because I had came to the point to realize that I was just going to die using. And like I said earlier, I live in a rural area in Georgia. And I went to this treatment place, and there was about 2 other Black people there. And they were talking about this thing called recovery and how it was working for them. And then I understood why God sent me to treatment. God sent me to treatment to save those 2 brainwashed Black folks, because they have been brainwashed. And so logic says, if you want to prove that something don't work, you work it. And I put my heart and my soul into working the 12 steps that treatment center was talking about. And 34 years later, I haven't found no reason to do anything different. The 12 steps work for me. And that's what brought me to recovery. And these past 34 years have been the best part of my life. And also, and I'm able to do my part to try to make this world better, and to also make up for all of the harm that I caused. And I found recovery when I wasn't looking for it, but I'm never gonna let it go. That's it.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I'm smiling. I'm like nodding and smiling at your story. So I relate to some of those things. So yeah, I was gonna go ahead and share mine a little bit briefly, superficially, but with some depth. So I was exposed to sign language when I was very young, but then I lost the language. So I was by myself, with everybody who's hearing, trying to be as hearing as possible, because that's the expectation of a person with a hearing loss that is able to read lips and speak for themselves. They have to chase communication. That's the expectation that the medical industry places on us. And I too was an overachiever. So I did the math. So I had spent about 8,000 hours of my childhood with speech lessons, trying to speak as good as possible instead of learning sign language. And what that did was it gave me a one-way street for connection, which meant it was very difficult for me to understand anybody, but it was very easy for everybody to understand me. So that just led me to being an overachiever as well. And I would say maybe about, I was probably like maybe 30 years old when my drinking had gotten out of hand. So because I am a businesswoman and most of my career was spent in working as human resources accounting, and I did not really know what I was doing, and I couldn't really understand what anybody was talking about. I tried my best, and I just constantly felt like a failure. And so I had to drink, so I didn't really have to like feel all the pain I was feeling. So it got out of hand. And so I come from a family of alcoholics myself. Um, so I did what everybody else in my family did, but you go to rehab. So before I went into rehab, I was very apprehensive about having a sign language interpreter. So again, when I mentioned the one-way street, I know that when you go into recovery, it depends on the connection you make that helps foster your recovery. And I, even in, the worst part of my addiction, I understood that, but I also used it as an excuse, like I can't go to recovery because then it's gonna make me feel worse. But I was gonna die, so I had to do it. Um, so I've had bad experiences with sign language interpreters throughout my life. So I started learning how to use an interpreter, and I went to a high school where there were like maybe a program of 30 deaf kids going to high school with like 2,000 hearing people. So that's where I learned how to use an interpreter and all of that. But however, it's just a lot of people don't understand about interpreters is that they overstep their boundaries very often. They will tell you their opinion about what they're interpreting about. Like, for example, I remember in high school, like maybe the teacher would be saying something and the interpreter would mention like, I don't like the clothes she's wearing, I don't like her tone of voice. And like, it was very, very odd for me to be exposed to that later in life, because I knew I saw many of my deaf friends, they thought that was all normal. So for me, I was just like, oh my God. And so there was one situation where I was in a driver's ed class, and we were going for a driving lesson, and I had the interpreter in the back. And so the driver's ed teacher started to sexually molest me when I was driving. And so I pulled over and ran back to the high school, and I reported this. So they had me sit and wait, and then later on the interpreter comes in, the deaf director of the program comes in, and they told me that I had to apologize to the driver's ed teacher for making these things up. So, and I said, but the interpreter was there, and the interpreter said, I saw nothing. So I saw that interpreter years later, and I asked why she had done that. And she said she was so young, she was 24, she had her own trauma, and she didn't want to face the confrontation that this might have caused. So, but in turn, that caused me to have just such a horrific experience and like just being so scared to use interpreters. So anyway, going back to rehab. So I go into rehab, and before I go there, my mom dropped me off. And my mom is like, Nicole, like, don't mess this up. There's one interpreter. This is the only interpreter we can find that is willing to work there 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. So I'm like, okay, I go in. And of course, the first week, this interpreter, he's a male interpreter. And this was during COVID, so we all get our own room. So he would be talking to me in sign language in a room full of hearing people. And he would tell me that he was going to go tell the CEO of the recovery center that he was going to get a key to my room and come in at night and come into bed, and he was talking about all of these things. And I had to sit there and take it because I didn't want to report him, because how would I continue to stay in rehab and get my 30 days done if I couldn't understand what was going on? So I put up with it. And it's one of the reasons why I stayed sober, because I would never again put myself through a situation where I have to choose life or death for a communication answer. It's just terrible. And so that is also another reason why I started this company, to educate not only recovery centers, but like many organizations across the board. Like, for example, the organizations I work for, the human resources and accounting like that, were just brutal. It's very brutal, and it contributes so much to poor mental health and to addiction. My community, we all have so many problems with alcohol and drugs because of the way the world treats us. So that is why I'm here in recovery and why I stay sober, and just to try to make the world a better place, an easier place, because really it can be an easier place if people who don't have disabilities just understand they're gonna have to get over themselves and put in a little more effort, especially in a workplace or a place of recovery. They really need to be able to put aside their cognitive distance and like see what's in front of their face and actually do the job the way it's designed to do. And just like, again, just trying to do my part to make the world a better place to live.
I've had this theory for a while about the recovery spaces and stuff. And I'm excited when I was told that you are an individual who is deaf, because I think people with sensory disabilities have some unique challenges or some unique issues when it comes to this whole recovery movement and this recovery community. A lot of the recovery policies, messages, just the whole recovery thing is built on communication. And when your disability is a sensory, which, just simply by it being a sensory, it's dealing with one of the senses. And when it's vision and hearing, those are two of the major functions of this world. And I can say I've been around recovery since 34 years. I've been I've been able to watch this quote recovery community come into existence. And number one, I must say that the recovery community stole a whole lot of what they built this thing on from people with disabilities, from the independent living movement, and from the blindness movement since the 40s, when we really created peer support. But I'm worried with the development of things like the RCOs and all this other kind of stuff. But when people, I think, Nikki, like you and I, show up at one of those type places, mainly these RCOs, and we are desperate, and for whatever reason, those RCOs don't have the equipment or the knowledge on how to make this beautiful message that recovery has to offer, when they don't make it accessible to us that day, and we get told, well, you got to come back tomorrow because we got to work on, or we got to figure out how we gonna share this message with you in an accessible, appropriate manner that you can receive it through. I think a whole lot of our peers don't go back. And that's an insult to me. And part of why it's an insult to me is that most of these places centered around recovery, they get all this taxpayer money, and there's the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, 34 years old next month. There's the Rehabilitation Act, there's Section 508, and all this other kind of stuff that all these smart people be going out writing all this grant money, but they don't do their part to make sure the stuff is accessible for people who have communication barriers because of their disability. And we tell them to come back tomorrow. And hell, they ain't gonna come back tomorrow. And they gonna wind up dying.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. I was also wondering if there were situations where like a person of the blind community needs to go to a recovery center, and do they say come back, so we're gonna make this place more accessible for you in terms of I don't know, just like making sure like the space is, the space is navigable. I can't say the word, but like so the space is easy for a blind person to navigate. Like, do they send people back and say come back before we can set this place up, or does the blind community just is able to go right in? Like for the deaf community, like if any of us need an interpreter, we have to wait. Like it's not like, I mean, when you're in recovery, it's not like it's not like booking a doctor's appointment. Like, okay, I'm going to check into rehab next week, because that's never going to happen. It has to be the day of or the next day. We'll wait for that. But so many of the people in the deaf community will either turned away because the recovery center doesn't want to pay for the interpreter because they're so ridiculously expensive, or they can't find anybody, or they've had experience where a deaf person wants to go to a recovery center, they book an interpreter. And just like, all of us in recovery, before we went into recovery, we change our mind all the time. We want to get help, and then we decide, oh, no, never mind, I want to like party for another week. So when it comes to like a deaf person or not, it's like you just messed up like this whole thing. Like now the recovery center has to pay like the minimum billable, like 2-week cancellation policy. And the organization no longer wants any deaf people to go because it's hurting the budget. So I was just wondering what kind of struggle that maybe the blind community had with in terms of things like that.
Well, I don't think there's much on the navigation side, that can't be overcome immediately. Even if it boils down to they just want to grab you and lead you around. And I get kind of hostile when people just come up and grab on me.
Yeah,
yeah. But but so I don't really think that the navigation part is as much of an issue for a blind person as it, but now when I also think about the navigation part for my brothers and sisters that maybe use wheelchairs and stuff, it's kind of interesting. Some of the community-based programs are housed in places that have wheelchair parking, but the entrance door is on this little narrow sidewalk, and they can't even, they can't get in because since the door opens out, the wheelchair's gonna be halfway off of the sidewalk. But with the sensory, I'm looking for help. I go into a place that claims they offer the message of hope, but they tell me I gotta come back tomorrow because they gotta locate an interpreter, or they got to locate some accessible documents, or they don't have no type of QR codes that can link me up with any digital resources so I can read about all these fantastic programs y'all doing here. Odds are I'm not coming back. And there's this big old movement going around about DEI and stuff, and I hate it because DEI, there's a glass ceiling. DEI deals with race and gender. They don't talk about disabled people. And disabled people are 1/4 of the community in the US, but we aren't in those types of discussions. Sound like a bunch of hypocrites to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned DEI training because my company, I actually created an online course. So it's a DEI training for employees organizations that want to become better. So I created one for deaf and hard of hearing the community, and we eventually would love to do like an umbrella one for disability, but I need to have more more what's it called, experts in that lived experience. So right now, all I've got is like the deaf and hard of hearing community. But however, so I did create this online course, and it's, we do it like virtually or in person, or they can do it online. But it's called Unpacking Hearing Privilege. And the reason why I did that is because I myself am a peer support specialist. So when I got out of recovery, never get out of recovery. But when I got out of rehab, the recovery organization, I became a peer support specialist for the deaf community for a behavioral health organization. And I did that for like about maybe a year before I started this business. But it was just one of the best experiences of my life. And I really think taking that the peer certification process, that really contributed so much to my recovery because I was going to AA, I was like doing all these different recovery avenues, all recovery, and I had this certification process, and that it blew my mind because I had never learned how to make connections with people. Because again, I go back to the one-way street thing, and I learned how to make a connection with people through that certification process, and it was something I wish I had taken a long time ago. But that being said, I also did unpacking white privilege when I was doing the certification process and working in this behavioral health organization. So when I was going to elementary school and I was being the only deaf person, my best friend was the only Black person in the entire town. Like she was adopted by a white family, and I myself am white. And so her and I would get kicked out of class often. So of course, she gets kicked out because all of the teachers throughout elementary, they're always looking at her, they're always, she's fidgeting or she's picking her nose, they'll kick her out of class. And I always got kicked out because they thought I had selective hearing, and they had me sit in the front, least restrictive environment, but really sitting in the front is very restrictive because we would have like classmates read, from the book. You have to read the first paragraph and the person behind you read the second paragraph. So I'm sitting at the front, and then this whole row goes all the way to the end of the back. And then it's my turn. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. So I get kicked out of class for that, like almost every day. So her and I would be, trauma bonding all the time. And she was the one that taught me how to compartmentalize everything. She said that I really must have been like 8. She said to me, "This is part of the package. Like, she's Black, and this is how the world treats her. So it's part of the package. And I hear differently, so that's part of the package." So she pretty much basically helped me learn how to just suck it up and be, just be good and just get through the freaking day. And so when I took unpacking white privilege, it unraveled a lot for me, even though I am a white person. It's only because that's how I learned, how to deal with what was going on with me. But looking at my Black friend, this is happening to her too. And so when I took that, I was just like, oh my God. And so I have worked for 2 years on this unpacking hearing privilege. So I made this course eventually, finally, 6 months ago. So that training has been really Like, I did not know how clueless people are. Like, I pretty much thought, like my friend said, you know, part of the package, I was like, these people must know what they're doing, and it must be me. So I kept spent my whole life trying to change like me, and then I designed this course, and I kept unpacking white privilege, and I did this course, and then I go through it to proofread over and over, and I like opened my eyes, and I was just like, it was never me, it was always them. Oh my God! And it was like the most joyful, you know, a couple of months of my life, to be honest with you. So I have like all these people taking the course, and we have like one-on-one after, and I've had so many people cry, and so many people like apologize, not to me, but like to their deaf family members or to the elderly parents who have lost their hearing or like all losing their hearing. They did not realize just how devastating their behavior is, and they're just not going the extra mile to make sure that a person who's deaf, you know, who has a hearing loss, feels more included. So this course really, I mean, I've been going through some difficult stuff in my life as well. I'm going through a divorce. My daughter's 18, she's going to college. I'm like, oh my gosh. But this journey I'm in right now is just like so beautiful. So I'm really excited for the DEI training to start to become more widespread, because it really is hope. And yeah, it goes back to like, oh my God, like I really did not know how clueless people were. And I did not know how little information there really is out there for a large organization, for small, not any organization. I really do believe, I mean, like you said, DEI is like a bunch of bullcrap. But however, no, me being a white person and me listening to all of my white relatives and all of my white neighbors, and like how, you know, dialed up they get because they find out they're causing harm and they didn't know it, they gotta fix it. They gotta fix it right away. They don't want to feel that feeling anymore. So I have seen, though, it is effective for, you know, people who are privileged and people who do want to make a difference. And I feel like the training and this sort of training really is important for it to be in a place where, you know, there's employment, because it carries out, it bleeds out into regular life, and it goes into society and becomes more, uh, a little bit more, at least I would say. Not perfect, no, but it's just a step. So, yeah.
So where do you live at, Nikki? What state are you in?
I live in Massachusetts. I'm in Texas. I'm just visiting. I might move to Texas, so I might be in for a rude awakening for different things. So the state of Massachusetts is very liberal. And yeah, so I'm from Massachusetts, born and raised there.
Well, now, you know, Greg Abbott is on a roll over there in Texas, and he's not really, you know, and even though he's part of our community, he don't think he's one of our, he don't think he's our peer because he's the governor, but you know, he's our disabled peer either way. But okay, so but I also heard you say that you are a peer specialist, and me too. I've been and here in Georgia. There are different types. There's the peer specialist for the substance abuse side. There's the peer specialist on the mental health side. There's the peer specialist on the disability side. And I got all three of those. And on the substance abuse and the mental health side, I know here in Georgia, they are currently going through this project on the substance abuse side, where they are doing certifications specifically for the hearing, for well, they call it the DHF, deaf and hard of hearing
Yep.
population. And it's kind of weird because the only reason why the agency is doing it is because that community sued them, and made them do it, and so they Georgia's substance abuse project is putting forth effort to certify people who are deaf or hard of hearing. That's, even though I kind of think that that's a little bit discriminatory, whereas I think they should just be doing some certification specifically for people who have any type of a disability, rather than just one specific group. If recovery is truly inclusive, I think.
Yes, I agree with you. I wish that I wish that view could be like more realistic. So I do work with my company does work with the Georgia Recovery Council. And yes, so yes, it's been a very interesting journey with them, and I think they're doing a great job in trying to, make the appropriate steps and stuff. But there are some issues that do come up, and I really do think that, I think that the number one problem is that the peer certification test to get certified is not accessible for the majority of deaf and hard of hearing people because of the medicalization of what hearing loss is and trying to make people with a hearing loss be as normal as possible, which means that we have a lot of people with language deprivation. So most of us, when we're born and we're deaf, the doctors tell our parents, don't sign. Like this is still going on in 2024, where the doctors and nurses tell parents, do not sign with their kids, because if you do, then they're gonna become more reliant on using sign language, and they're not gonna use their voice, they're not gonna be able to assimilate into the world appropriately. So we all like plus in our own family, so a lot of the people we get language through our family. So how is a deaf person supposed to get any sort of language accusation or a language foundation if their entire family is treating them as if they're a normal person and they're just missing everything? So that in turn, it causes a lot of issues with deaf and hard of hearing adults, where it's hard to understand a new concept. It's hard to read English. And sometimes, and most of the time, not sometimes, but a lot of the times, the interpreters that are brought on board, they're not very good at interpreting, to be honest with you. And they interpret in a way that is still not accessible because we have the deaf community that has language deprivation, and they're not understanding because it's a different, I guess the way our brain changes, as we are raised in this sort of environment, it takes another deaf person in order to understand, like, okay, your brain has changed this way. I'm going to approach this in a way where your brain can understand, because I understand it too. So that's where the role of the deaf, peer support specialist comes in. However, I do believe with more education and more awareness and less, less issues from the get-go. Like we have doctors and nurses that really take this seriously and then educate the hearing parents that you need to learn sign language. I understand that the world is not hearing, but you're gonna make your child have brain damage if you do not do these steps. And I'm not sure why the medical industry does not do that. They do not do that. And so that's where I think that needs to be fixed first. So then as the child gets older and we have more accessible language, and then we need recovery support, we're able to go into a place where there is that kind of umbrella and be able to, get the support we need. But we are so far away from that right now in our community and with the people in hearing world. So that is, yes. So again, I wish it were more realistic and as simple as you said. Yes.
Yeah. And so and since you are working with Georgia, I used to like I said earlier, I got some some deaf friends and stuff. And there are different types of sub. I don't know if sub communities is the right word, as much as I know that there are different ways, there are different, I don't want to call it languages, but there are different ways of talking or communicating when you're talking about Black deaf people versus other or white people or Latino. And so since there are so many different types of sign languages, how would you suggest we try to cover all of those sub communities when it comes to communicating and using sign language?
Well, that is gonna be a loaded answer, but so I mean, because of the wide range of hearing loss there are. I mean, so let's say you got like a deaf person that went to a deaf school and they have like a deaf family and then they go to a deaf college and like all of these things. Their language will be and a white person versus a Black deaf person. The language is different. However, there is I mean, the language, the sign language is not so different in a way where, you know, we go into a room, like I'm a white deaf girl and a woman and I'm signing, I'm gonna have people not understand me. It's not like that. It has more to do with an accent in sign language. So I would like to call it an accent. So, and then you take like somebody like me, I mean, my signing has gotten better over the past 20 years, but back in the day when I had just left, you know, a fully mainstreamed only, you know, being the only deaf person and learning sign language, my sign was very, what is it called? It's very English. So I would like follow the way a sentence is. And when you take American Sign Language, it isn't really like that. It's more like a vision. It's like it's more of a picturistic, you know, the grammar structure is different. But however, people understood me. I understood people. It's just a matter of skill and getting comfortable with that specific language. So really, to solve the problem that you're saying is to educate, you know, both the hearing people and like deaf people, being a deaf peer support specialist or any support, you know, peer support person, is being open, like especially in the deaf community, because we are so oppressed and marginalized. I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term recoveryism, like the fact that, you know, that way of recovery is better than this way. So it's similar in the deaf community. We are so oppressed that we oppress each other. So we have like just little self-worth and we grasp onto things that we're part of. So let's say somebody who is really, you know, very good at sign language, they're very, they're very skilled at it and they believe that everybody else should be like that. That's where, you know, some training that my company come up with is in training to try to just teach people to put aside their biases. You know, we all have, even in the deaf community, we have our own biases, just like, you know, and everybody else. So it's just a matter of teaching everybody that, you know, there is no one right way to do things. I mean, everybody should have the autonomy to communicate in the way they want to. So like, for example, today I don't have a sign language interpreter. I'm using, you know, the closed caption, I'm using my voice, I'm looking at, you know, reading your lips. So normally, I mean, I know that I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this from the deaf community because they feel that I should be appropriately representing the community in the best way possible. But I'm not here to represent my community. I'm here to represent myself. And I am a deaf through and through. My experiences, even if I went to a hearing school, I didn't know sign language for a long time, that does not make me less deaf than you. So that kind of thing. So the kind of training and how to approach that is just try to get everybody to be on the same page. It's like you just follow the golden rule. Really pretty much. You treat others how you're going to be treated. And I also believe that educating the hearing people in recovery spaces and organizations and society is you become more aware that your oppression and your neglect and your like half-assed, reaching out and trying to communicate and bridge that gap, it causes us to cause problems against each other. So, what is that? I read somewhere, like, if you want to have like a dictator country, what you do is you take these marginalized people and you take away their human rights, and you don't need to do anything to eradicate them. They're going to eradicate themselves. So that is what it can, in theory, is what's happening to at least what I think in my community, and just making things worse for each other because of our basic human rights being taken away from us, and people are not really understanding that this is happening. And even in our own community, we minimalize things so much because that's our survival skill. Like even for myself, I minimalize so many things that because such horrible things had happened to me for so long and they're so normal. So I kept doing that. So I just believe that, again, just education and shadow work. So yes, a lot of shadow work and just, talking about things that are uncomfortable. Very helpful.
And so I want to ask you, when you first started going into recovery spaces where there wasn't no other deaf people participating, were there some challenges that you had to keep revisiting, or were there some certain conversations you had to keep having? And do you still have to have some of those same conversations 3 years later?
Well, when you're talking about recovery spaces, like within the deaf community, is what you mean? I just want to make sure you meant that.
No, in the general recovery
so
spaces.
yeah, so I would say I went to detox first, and that was just terrible because like I have a cochlear implant, and so there was this thing called deaf anxiety. So we get so much anxiety because again, the world is in an inaccessible place. We're always constantly looking over our shoulder, like looking around, like like if I see two people coming down the street and then they're like have a horrified look on their face, I don't know what's going on. I'm looking behind me, the ball coming, the car coming at me. So, and living a long life of that, it's just so much anxiety. And like when you go into a space where people are expecting you to chase communication, causes so much anxiety. You like going there, you just like, I mean, for me, there were many times I prefer to die than just to have to face that. And just blessed that I didn't die and I faced it. But one of I guess the biggest challenges for me, it wasn't, the first thing was trying to build enough self-worth to be able to advocate for myself. That was the first step. So how am I supposed to have any idea of self-worth if from birth, well, from 2 years old in my situation, was that I was not worthy enough for my own family to sign to me. I was not worthy enough to go into a school where, it was accessible for me. I was not worthy for any of that, any way possible. And I was expected to chase communication constantly and apologizing for misunderstanding, for sitting in the hallway because, I can't follow that. A lifetime of that is very, very difficult to get out of and be able to advocate for yourself, to actually think that, you know what, I've had enough, I'm worth this. And so that's the first step. And then the second step is to be able to have enough energy, like, to remind people, like, just slow down, like, like, stop acting like if I'm a hearing person, like, just because I can speak or if I can read lips doesn't mean life is easy. It is not easy at all. Like everybody has to really slow down. Like everybody should be playing like a hot potato game. Like you can't talk until you have the thing in your hand. So at least that kind of thing. And And again, you just feel like a burden. So really, I think the biggest issue in the recovery community as a deaf person is finding that self-worth first, is to be able to discover that and be able to do that and be able to advocate for yourself and be able to educate people. I really think that's the biggest step for many of us. And then I would say, let's see, going back to detox, it just all the things about deaf anxiety, like we don't have interpreters for when they give medication. And you know, when you go into detox, if you go into like a recovery space and you're fresh off the streets and you're like probably like the last time you had a drink or a drug was like what we found a couple hours prior, and your mind is not in the right space at all, like at all. And so I think that's where a deaf peer specialist would come into play very, very handy, because they would understand just what a horrible, hard place people are in, and they're in no place to advocate for themselves. So that's really where I think having a deaf recovery peer specialist comes in. It's important because they do the advocating for you, because you have, like, we all have our own addictions because we've had to advocate for ourselves for so long. And then you have to go in and keep doing that. So that really is, for me, the biggest issue. And I go back to detox and the medicine, is that anxiety for me, myself, like the nurses that would give me the medication, they did not have the patience with me. I was like, what are you giving me? Like, I want to know what I'm taking. And they would just be like, you got a long line behind you, just take it. Like, they would not like even write down. And I would take the medicine, and then I would feel worse. Like my drug of choice was alcohol. It wasn't drugs. And just trying to go into a place of recovery and be under some sort of medication that made me feel worse than before I came in. Like, that stuff really scares me. Like, am I going to end up dying there? Like, they won't even tell me what medication I'm taking. And like, who's going to help me? That I'm completely alone. And so those are really, it's just, those are they're not little things, big things. But I'm assuming they are little to people who have normal hearing, because why would you do this to people? Like, it doesn't make zero sense to me. So yeah. I hope that it was a long-winded answer, but I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. And yeah. And I'm gonna put in a plug right now and then. I'm on unhinge myself from taking over Waddell's show. But I have been asked to facilitate a webinar next month through Mobilize Recovery. I don't know if you are familiar with Mobilize Recovery. It's a national grassroots recovery organization, and it's primarily, it was created by this dude named Ryan Hampton out of Nevada, and my topic is disabled people and recovery. And so well, we're gonna have to swap contact info, because I would love for you to be on my panel. And I have facilitated some discussions about accessibility and disabled people down through the years, and I've done some on a national level and regional level. And so
yes, absolutely. I would love that opportunity. I did want to also mention that when I was 9 years old, I was a picked spoke child for Miracle Ear. So it was a hearing aid company, Miracle Ear. So when I was like nine, in the ages of like 9 or 10, like that. Now I had to travel across America and give like presentations about how the hearing aid like saved my life. Now I'm part of the propaganda that like I run my life to everybody as a child. And so right now I'm kind of like very excited to remedy that and start telling the truth. So I am open to going and talking wherever I can.
Okay. All right. All right. So, sir. Oh, and and the other thing, I love talking. I love asking questions. I host a weekly Zoom cast every Tuesday night, and it's targeted around disabled people and promoting total community involvement in the community of one's choice. And my theory is the only way that we can make the best choices for our lives is if we know about what is out there and we get proper information. And I don't know if you are involved in the overall disability movement, but there's a vast movement out there, and like I said earlier, a whole lot of what the recovery community is built on now is what people with disabilities developed, and I feel we got that our movement got hijacked and the recovery community took over, and they did the better marketing of the total inclusion movement than us disabled people. Yeah. But sir, I apologize for talking too much. I'm through.
No, y'all are doing great. I'm really enjoying the conversation that's being had. I do want to specifically ask, I think we've pulled it out a little bit, but specifically, how do you advance health equity through the work that you do on an everyday basis? And this could be in terms of accessibility, but how do you advance health equity through your work?
I'll let Tootle answer first. I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking too.
I think first, and I want to bring you into this conversation, sir. When you think about equity, what comes to your mind? So we can kind of, because that word is being tossed around a whole lot now, but it's like a one-liner in my mind. So when you think about health equity or just equity in general, what comes to your mind? So I can maybe make sure we halfway looking at this thing. Well, we talking about the same thing.
Yeah, as far as specifically my perspective is there's a difference between equity and equality. Equality is more everyone gets the same thing, and equity is people get what they need according to their needs. So yeah, with the question, I'm specifically asking how do you advance that in your work? How do you in the work you do make sure other individuals have accessibility to recovery resources or whatever that may be?
One of the main ways I think is thank God for technology. And for me personally, like the iPhone, man, the iPhone has brought about some equity for me that is beyond measure. I got my first iPhone back in 2009, I think, when they first put the speech on there. And I've been an iPhone user ever since. Matter of fact, Apple may want to pay me one day. But I believe in wellness. Like I said, recovery is nothing without wellness. And wellness, I think, is about like recovery. An individual can define it however they want to, but wellness in my mind is being able to live my life with the least amount of physical and emotional pain as possible without interfering with the next man. So I do a whole lot of groups, sharing what I have learned over the years since I've been on this journey. And I tell folks I am a wellness recovery coach. I don't know if there's no such thing, but Tootle's one. I have studied a whole lot of different processes since I found the 12 steps and was given the opportunity and the option to always maintain an open mind. And I'm comfortable now with not knowing all of the answers. I think it is important to, if we want to make health or wellness accessible to everybody in the most unrestricted that is available or understandable to them. I think that's what the equity part is about. The health equity part is about. So having things accessible, like when I do my groups, I use technology and I use a whole lot of QR codes. And I also do my best to take advantage of using plain language when I'm sharing and whatever setting I'm in or whatever group that I'm doing. I'm also a tobacco cessation specialist, because that's another one of those areas that really impact the disability community, is the nicotine and all that stuff that the general population don't really pay that much attention to. But and from what I have been taught about being more trauma informed, and what the 12 steps have taught me about meeting people where they are and being able to be as, to be able to get my message across with different methods, or by saying the same thing, but being able to say it that a person who has a bachelor's degree can understand exactly what I'm saying, just like a person who has a third grade education can understand, because it's not healthy if what you telling me I can't understand it, or it's not healthy for you if what I'm relaying to you, but I cannot say it in a language, and I'm not necessarily talking about like Spanish or Chinese or whatever, as much as I'm not saying it, in a way that you can fully understand what I'm talking about, while at the same time not taking away any of your dignity. I think that's missing in a whole lot of areas that and I like with most of the stuff that I do is community based. So I come in contact with a whole lot of people from different walks of life. And unfortunately, not a lot of them are disabled people, unfortunately, which troubles my heart deeply. But I offer a whole lot of community-based services, and being able to relate and to everybody and to making everybody feel like I'm talking directly to them without talking down to them, trying to share what I know, or more importantly, what I'm trying to learn, because I'm always trying to learn. And I don't know if that's really what you was expecting, or if that's what you was trying to get me to say, but that's what I think about when I think about making sure to address it or to offer wellness options to you in the most accessible way that you can comprehend and understand what I'm talking about. That's it.
Yeah, I really liked your response. I loved your response. I just want what you had. I didn't want to lead it. I'm trying to stay as general as possible with my questions.
Okay.
Yeah, Nikki.
You may have to repeat it to Nikki, because I talk so doggone long, she done probably forgot what I said.
No, I think I remember the question. So. Yeah, so how have I been advancing the work in health equity? Yeah. Well, again, yeah, I mean, I like, the Tootle talking about, going towards the umbrella of, disability instead of just a certain one. Like I eventually would love to go that way, but I feel like I have to like do this first so I can expand, you know what I mean? Because it's just so much activeness, like deaf and hard of hearing things. But that is the direction I want to go in. But like currently, really basically is just I'm trying to get organizations, hospitals, board members, CEOs, HRs, of all of these hospitals across the country, in recovery spaces, big organizations, because I mean, again, I just think what is going on currently for my community is absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. And I just feel that education needs to be out there, especially doctors and hospitals, people who work in hospitals, to be more aware of the medicalization view of what hearing loss really means. Because I go back to like when I'm talking about self-worth and like dignity, and like if you're training somebody since birth that they're not worth anything, that's not a good sign. You kind of want to address that, that's really where I'm trying to like gain or health equity. Really is basically it goes under the whole disability umbrella, is that our voices are not being invited to the table. So all of these decisions are being made by people who don't have disabilities, that are trying to normalize things as possible, as much as possible, instead of bringing, people with diverse voices to the table to help, not only help make decisions, but really basically make the decision. Help be like leading policy makers and changers and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been trying to do, is just get more awareness about, peer support specialists, especially when you're a parent and you have a deaf baby and you're like, oh my God, this is the first, deaf person I've met in my life, is my only child. I want people to realize that that thought is not true. It's because most of us who are born deaf or hard of hearing, myself included, my disability level is severe to profoundly deaf. So I am very close to the profoundly deaf. So my decibel loss is like 100 and like 98. But why am I able to speak like this? Why am I able to read lips? Nobody knows why. I don't know why. Maybe it's just some kind of like thing I was born with, or some grit, or I don't know, just some exposure, or like some moment of autonomy that I figured out at a very young age, and I chased that autonomy. So there are different factors that play into part. But just like just getting awareness out there that a lot of deaf people pretend to be hearing because we don't have enough deaf work to say, you know what, repeat that, I don't understand it. Or like, you know, just being like, okay, walking into a space saying, okay, I'm deaf, everybody needs to like slow down. And instead just putting on that mask and pretending that you understand everything. I mean, like I have gotten facial muscle like under control. Like, you know, when you go to an audiologist and you do the test. So what I did since I was a very young girl, I would look at the audiologist and I could see her neck muscle twitch every time she pushed the button. So I would raise my hand. I run this game. So really, no, I was just play acting. So that's what you need, but I'm a kid. Of course. So there's so many of us out there. So when you're having a deaf child, you give birth to a deaf baby and they're like, oh shit, I'm so sorry your child's deaf. And you're like, oh, this is the first person I've met that is deaf. That is number one, it's not true. And you know, the hospitals really need to bring in not just audiologists, speech pathologists, you know, early intervention people. It actually bring somebody who had had lived experience of being deaf, you know, growing up deaf, bring them in and have them, you know, share their lived experience, help the parents make better informed decisions instead of it being so completely hearing centric. Because as well as everybody would, I understand and I've been raised this way, that everybody wishes that I could have hearing, I could have normal hearing. And all they do is just wish. And they don't do anything to help make that bridge, you know, gap. So I really believe that bringing in, you know, the voices of, you know, people who have lived experience with disabilities and into like policy making decisions into serious things that like affect an entire population. Like, you know, like you said, 1/4 of the population is disabled. So how many of these 1/4, you know, the population when they're born are getting, these parents are getting informed decisions? They're not. They really are not. So I think that really is a big key, you know, step here. So that's what I try to do. So I think that's it for me for now.
That's great. And I think you led into my next question, which is, what are some strategies you believe could remove the barriers that have been faced in the recovery space? So what are some strategies that could kind of help move towards accessibility that haven't been implemented, or you may have seen it implemented before and you're like, I should see more of this going on. So Nikki, you left off with it. You could pick it back up. It sounds like you were leading into that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what. Oh, I'm trying to think of what works for me. I mean, to be well, I mean, the place I went to, even though the interpreter situation was not the best, that recovery space I spent my 32 days in, the group of women I was with were amazing. And that really played a big part is because they did try to improve me. And I felt, no, it's very healing for me to see how they all try to make an effort. Like most of the time, not all of the time, which is fine. You know, I mean, everybody, we all have our own issues. We're there to like heal, you know, heal, so they can't be doing anything for each other. I got that. But I would say that they made more of an effort than the whole like 40 years I had been alive at that point. Well, at that time, 39. But that was just so important for me, for my recovery. And I would like to see, you know, spaces have more things like that. But how do we get there? I'm not quite too sure. Uh, I mean, for one thing, I would just say that education again, like not just trying to promote my DEI training. I mean, I would invite anybody to take any sort of education or training at a recovery space in order to learn, you know, the damage you're actually doing by not going that extra mile to include a person with a hearing loss. You're causing so much more damage. This person's probably going to leave and, you know, might end up dying because you did not take that extra step. and really just training people to get more comfortable, because one big thing I noticed is that people who are not exposed to deaf people, or maybe our voices sound funny, or we need extra like gestures and stuff like that. People who are not familiar with that are so uncomfortable, and they really have a difficult time dealing with that uncomfortable level. And I just think that some sort of training discussion, like on a national level, or like, you know, in a recovery space at a national level, any person that wants to work in this kind of, you know, space for recovery, they really do need to learn how to feel more comfortable, not only with the communication thing, but with any sort of disability. It's really just do some inner shadow work to get over that, and have some kind of training in place that whenever you have a new person come in and work, they take that training. And just continually being exposed and bringing people to the table with their voices, you know, in their experience. I'm trying to think, but yeah, I hope I answered that. I kind of already forgot the question.
Yeah, that was a great response. Just for a reminder, the question is, what are some strategies you believe could remove some of the barriers faced in the recovery space or any space, you know?
Yes. Oh, I did also want to add, like, you know, just adding closed captions to the TV. Like, I remember I went to detox, and one of the reasons I left was because not only did I not understand anything, I didn't understand what medication I was taking. The TV, they had no closed captions. And back in my party days, I spent a weekend in jail. And I have more accessibility in jail than I did in this detox. Like, send me back to jail. But you know, that kind of thing. Just little things like that, yeah.
So you are criminal. No.
I am a criminal. I got arrested. I got arrested for the assault and battery against a police officer, but I didn't know he was a police officer. He had plain clothes, and he said he was a police officer, but I didn't hear him. And he had like dragged my friend, so everybody like was staring at this, you know, man dragging my friend, who was a very small little girl, and nobody was holding me back. So I decided to go and like be the superhero. So I got arrested for assault and battery against the police officer when I was 18. And I spent a weekend in jail. So I went into jail on a Thursday. So lesson learned is you don't go to jail on a Thursday because you ain't getting out till Monday.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to come on my podcast, to two niggas. I've been pushing for over 20 years that there needs to be more interaction between community-based programs and centers for independent living. Centers for independent living are in the disability community what RCOs are to the recovery community. They are non-residential community-based programs. And so just like we encourage people who are seeking recovery to go visit their local RCO, we encourage disabled people to go check out their local Center for Independent Living to get more information about what all is available in the community that would allow you to live more independently with your disability. And so, and I've been on this push of having listening sessions between RCOs and Centers for Independent Living. Because there is big time stigma on the recovery side about people with disabilities, just like there's big time stigma on the disability side about people in recovery. I am on the board of a national organization of rural centers for independent living, and I've been blessed to be able to kind of create some stuff for throughout the country on how to get these two community-based programs to start talking to each other and share info. And one of the things, and this is kind of a plug also, we are constantly being bombarded about the overdose crisis, but they very seldom talk about people with disability in that discussion. When the FDA started cracking down on doctors and prescriptions, a lot of my peers got caught up and got their pain scripts cut in half. And I know personally some people who started getting street drugs to deal with their pain. And I had a real dear friend that I still swear to God he OD'd, because we used to have conversations about how his doctor cut his script, but he didn't do nothing about the pain. But when you hear these commercials and all this stuff about overdose rates and stuff, they never talk about disabled people. And they never talk about in most of your harm reduction programs. Nobody go and reach out to where the disabled people live at, or none of these harm reduction programs go to where centers for independent living are and try to share the message of harm reduction or Narcan or the fentanyl test strips. So like I said, my main thing is there needs to be more communication between the recovery community and the disability community. And both sides need to go in with the intention of listening to the other and trying to implement some of the suggestions that the other community bring. Like they often say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And when a non-disabled person is talking to a disabled person or trying to offer peer support or trying to offer recovery options to a disabled person, at times, since that's coming from somebody who the individual can't relate to, the message may not get there. And we need more programs like what I'm learning about what Nikki do. I'm impressed. And I look forward to learning more about, all of the stigma reduction work your business is doing, and maybe how we can implement it in some other places. And take advantage, and the RCOs, well, the recovery community in general, need to use more of the technology and ask us what we need, rather than like one of the things that I have a hard time with is like when agencies or businesses or things try to do an assimilation activity, like next month is going to be Disability Awareness Month, and October is Disability Employment Month. And during these months, you have all these well-meaning people who have simulation sessions. They may get somebody who ain't never used a wheelchair, get them to try to do some activities with a wheelchair, or somebody who's not blind, but they want to give them a cane and they ain't never had no doggone blindness training, and to get them to simulate being blind. That does more harm than it does anything useful, because that person, prior to participating in that simulation, never had any training on how to live life with whatever the simulation they are participating in. And they leave that situation thinking, well, dog, if I couldn't do it, I can just imagine how it's gotta be hard on an individual who's had to live like that for years. And that's about all for right now, I think.
I wanted to add that one thing was when you talk about a big thing that I've been like pushing is when people talk about intention, I really don't care about anybody's intentions. I'm here for the impact. I'm here to talk about the impact because, like I mentioned, like, when I realized it was never me, it was them. And I realized that, people just don't know what they don't know. So that itself just proved to me it had nothing to do with intention. So when people say, well, that wasn't my intention, I try not to go towards that because I really, and we call it, like me and my community, we call this being, it's a trait of being deaf, it's being blunt, being straightforward with like, there's no like necessity being trying to be nice about things. So I am very blunt about that with, and I'm like, I really don't care about the intent because I really honestly believe that most of us, I mean, with the exception of some, most of us have good intentions. We're all generally good people, and we, do have good intentions. So I really think that word should be removed when we're talking about, situations like that. We need to be talking about impact because again, it like if, just when people learn that, talking about their intention, you're referring to your defensiveness, and that's an insult itself. Really don't talk about that. Just talk about the impact, and then that should kind of like, I feel like that will alleviate some thrust across the board. That it like really is not a personal attack. Doesn't make you a bad person. It's just it's being conditioned by the way this society is. It's not designed for people with disabilities. So therefore, if you're being conditioned by a society that's not designed for people with disabilities, it has nothing to do with the type of person you are. It's just like, focus on the impact. There was something else you mentioned. Oh, I liked your idea about having competitions between recovery spaces and independent living centers. Yes, absolutely. And I agree with that 100% because we also have, like in the deaf community, we have independent living centers for people who are deaf. And we normally get, when I say we, I have worked at a couple of these places in the past. So normally when there's somebody being referred, from a place of recovery, and then they go into a place, the independent living situation, the people who are working there have no idea about, what recovery spaces look like, what, their needs, the support they need, like independent living spaces really don't really talk that much about that. And I really do think that's important, because there needs to be some sort of like transitional period, or at least a place for somebody to go when they leave a space of recovery, be able to get, get on their feet and learn the skills they need to learn. And there really is a huge gap in that. And I honestly did not think of that until you mentioned that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because one of the worst things I think we can do, since we are in the helping field, and I said it before, is that an individual comes through the door and we tell that person, you got to come back tomorrow, because we don't have nothing to that meets your that equity thing, so because you never want a desperate person to have to leave without taking something and come back tomorrow. So that's that goes on the recovery side, just like it go on the disability side. And so that communicating is very important, I think.
I agree.
All right. Well, so as we're getting ready to lead out, I have two more questions. My first question is, what resources do you believe should be amplified?
Conversations between the different communities, just like we were just talking about. If we really want to make sure that our message of how you as an individual, you can thrive in the community of your choice. If I haven't, well, like recovery says, if I don't have the lived experience to share with you, I should at least be able to point you in the direction of somebody who do. And since we're talking about recovery and disabled people, going back to just what we were just talking about, if the recovery center, whatever, can't give you or can't offer you access to what you're looking for, they should be able to at least, and I would like to add, do a warm handoff to the place that can. And the same should go when it's coming from the disabled, from the disability side, I think. And, because we don't, once again, I don't think none of us want somebody to leave a place without getting something that will give them the incentive to try one more day.
Yeah. Yep. It's along the same line there. And I guess just bring more awareness to the fact that a lot of recovery spaces to this day are turning deaf people away, saying they don't have the resources for interpreting services, or they no longer take deaf people. And they use that term in the ADA. They say it's not financially, they can't financially do it. So that's what most of these places are saying. I have had several people in my community that have been looking for recovery spaces, and I know that I would say for 5 out of 8 of them I know specifically, it took them 2 months to find a place that would accept them. And I think that's just unacceptable. And this right here, I mean, people who are listening on to this podcast, come from places of recovery centers and stuff like that. And I know that some of you listening in know this, and you guys have turned away deaf people because of that. And again, it goes back to the human rights thing. Like, it really is a human rights violation. And the fact that it's being treated like it's not just goes back to the whole self-worth thing, that you are really literally eradicating a group of people because, you know, you can't get over your own communication bias and the feeling of being uncomfortable and actually turning away real human beings that need help and that have had a really, you know, tough time with it too. So I think that definitely needs to be, you know, amplified 100%. In 2024, I think it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow, that's great. I appreciate y'all for being so like honest and authentic with what you're saying. So the last question I have is, what gems of wisdom do you want to leave with the listeners? What gems of wisdom?
Should have given me more time. That question wasn't on the list.
Recovery is possible for everybody with the proper supports. And I think that if I'm going to want to remain in the helping arena, I got to be willing to have, number one, a more open mind, and number two, seek out people who are doing this thing, but who are different from me. Because that's the only way that I can really go around saying that recovery works. You know, is from seeing people who don't look like me living this recovery thing out loud and being able to be their authentic self, to be able to be their total authentic self. Now I know I'm unique, hey, but recovery is possible. And I think that part of carrying the message of recovery is possible is letting my blindness shine just as much as my blackness shines or my ruralness shine. Because, prior to me going and to treatment and getting into recovery, I didn't know nobody like me existed. Like I said earlier, I didn't even think this thing worked. But also, since I've been around here, most of the people who halfway look like me, in order for them to recover, they had to move to the big cities and stuff. And I love visiting big cities, but I like playing in the dirt. So I'm gonna always come back home. But so being outspoken, and I like what Nikki said about intentions and stuff, and believe me, I'm gonna be using that from now on. And live your life, and if you see somebody that have what you got, hell, go ask them how did they damn get it. That's it for me.
Yeah, I think I would just, I mean, again, recovery is possible, and I think that, we all search for the meaning of life and all of that. And I think that, I don't know, I guess for me, and I think for many people, the meaning of life really is connection. And so recovery is possible, but with connection. And I mean, we're all worth it, whether we're hearing or deaf, disabled, blind, all of that. And I think that directing this towards the people without disability is that, they are also worth it to be able to put aside their biases and make connections with people that are different from them. Because really, when it comes down to it, we really are all the same. We're unique in our own ways, but we basically, at the basic level, we are all human beings and we all need connection. So, yeah, that's it from me.
All right, all right. Well, I want to thank you both once again for this, for joining the podcast. It was a great conversation that y'all had. I'm sure, just like me, a lot of people will be more aware of being more cognizant to people with disabilities in whatever form that may be, and being like Nikki said, not just trying to have a good intention, but making sure to have a good impact, striving to have that. So yeah, once again, I want to thank you both, and yeah, until next time.
Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you for connecting with us, listeners. Our goals in sharing stories and information is to provide hope and resources to the field of peer recovery. Please join us again next time on Recovery Talk. You can find our episodes on our website, peerrecoverynow.org. That's peerrecoverynow.org, or wherever you find your podcasts. The Peer Recovery Center of Excellence is funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration to enhance peer recovery support services by expanding access to training and technical assistance service across the country. The views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the official policies of the Department of Health and Human Services, nor does mention of trade names, commercial practices, or organizations imply endorsement by the U.S. government. Talk with you next time.